Good afternoon or morning for our West Coast folks. Um, Before we begin, I'd like to note that this webinar is being recorded and that all presentation materials will be posted on our website. You can find that at national8association.org. If you would like to ask any questions throughout, please use the Q&A function. And if time allows, we'll jump into the questions at the end of the session. So without further ado, I know we got a lot to get over, so I will pass it over to Trevor Skelly and Anna Sanders from Gov Contract Pros covering a very important topic, the 8A audit.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you, everyone on the call for joining. Obviously, we are not pleased to be here with you under these circumstances, but given the number of questions and comments and concerns that GCP was fielding from our clients, and we were supposed to do an event with the National 8A Association next month, but they graciously offered this venue to move up so that we can discuss the 8A audit letter. As I'm sure everybody on the call remembers, December 5th, about 8:30 in the morning, you received a email from the SBA, questioned whether or not that email from the SBA was even from the SBA, whether or not it was spam. But of course, we have confirmed that the contents of that document are, in fact, coming from the SBA, and the potential consequences are very serious. So, here is the agenda for this afternoon. As Tara had mentioned, we are happy to field questions. We can try to answer those as we're going through the agenda, but what we're going to do is do a really quick, see how we got here with this 8A audit background. I want to take us back very briefly to the HubZone decertifications back in 2023, and then we're going to go item through the demand letter. There's a couple of items, again, based on questions that we've received from clients. We've sort of grouped those into a couple of the specific items that were demanded by the SBA. And so we'll try to spend a significant amount of time on those. So, as I think everybody on the call can also recall, going back to January, things sort of started to change. So, we saw the president issue an executive order that purported to eliminate "quote unquote" DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in federal contracting. And from there, we've seen a number of actions taken by the SBA, which have unfortunately largely targeted and largely centered on the 8A program, given what I would say are a number of misconceptions about the program. But nevertheless, we had that executive order. Then on the SBA administrator on day one reduced the goaling for SDBs from 15% to 5%. We recently saw the SBA take action to suspend ATI Government Solutions. That debarment is still ongoing. And then finally, or I should say most recently, we had Senator Ernst introduce legislation to effectively curb 8A awards, and also sent out a rather misguided letter to 22 of the agencies, making some factual inaccuracies. But what we all had expected to come down the pipe has now come, and that is in the form of a letter that the SBA did send to all 4,300 active 8A participants. Real quick before we get into the audit content letter, the content of the audit letter, I just wanted to take us back briefly in time. I know on some of the participants on the call are not only 8As, but they're also hub zones, WASBs, SDV OSBs. And if you remember going back to 2023 as a result of the Aaron Sams DOJ actions, the precursor to that was that the SBA had participated and assisted with collecting information from various hub zone companies, and those letters were that information was then used to prepare proposed decertification. So I think if we're taking a step back, we really want to look at this demand letter that the 8A that the SBA has issued to 8As as sort of phase one. This is the information gathering, it's the document production, and this is the data that the SBA will use to conduct further investigations. Based on our support of clients going back to the hub zone matter, one of the biggest reasons for hub zones, or the significant reason, was that they just failed to respond. So, since you're all on the call, I think we can safely say that your intention is to respond to the SBA's demand, but we'll get further into that right now. Anna, did you have some comments on, sort of what we should be producing or what we should be preparing vis-a-vis both the site and the letter?
Yes, so I actually already fielded a Q&A about that, but there is a little bit of a discrepancy between my SBA and the audit letter. Let's remember that you are responding to the audit letter and not my SBA. So, for example, the audit letter demands certain financial documents be produced as CSV files, but then my SBA is saying PDFs. You should produce it as a CSV file. If my SBA will allow it. I believe that the PDF designation on my SBA is just sort of standard. I've never seen that website have a different document outlined. There are some other differences too, like the demand letter contains the 13 different topics, but then my SBA only contains 12. It's missing the 13th item of the subledger. Well, you should still produce the subledgers for the 3 fiscal years, and it might be in a different section, but they should still be given because the SBA requested it. And the years, while I admit in the SBA letter are quite vague, where they just say 3 full fiscal years, my SBA is even more confusing, where they say current year, prior year one, and prior year two. We are recommending for for the last 3 full fiscal years, that means 2022, 2023, and 2024, because you received the demand letter before fiscal year 2025 calendar year is completed. And as we'll get to, one of the requests relates to your tax records for the past 3 full fiscal years. So obviously you can't produce tax records for 2025. And therefore, to have all the data align, we think it makes the most sense for it to be 2022, 2023, and 2024.
And on the another question I think that we've received, or maybe it was frustration, was all of this is already covered in my 8A annual review. So what would you say, to any participants that are thinking, I have already submitted this to the SBA? You have to resubmit it, but, maybe draw some distinctions versus the program year versus fiscal year.
Right. So the only documents that actually truly align are some of the financial statements. So, as all of you are aware, for your annual review, you always submit your balance sheet and your profit and loss statement. And if your sales or if your receipts are above a certain threshold, then you submit audited financials. But that's really it. These things don't align with the annual review. Now, that being said, a lot of the data you might refer to when you are preparing your annual review, but you're more or less preparing a summary of that data. And now the SBA wants to see the data itself. So I wouldn't wait until the last second thinking that you can just say, I already provided this, because overall you didn't. And even with the financial statements, while the data might align, assuming you did a calendar year submission, even though sometimes for the annual review, they ask for your program year. The format is different. Typically, for the annual review, when you submit the financial statements, I've only seen people submit PDFs, but here SBA is asking for it as a CSV. So you should comply and just resubmit.
And speaking about the last minute, Anna, can you kind of walk us through the certificate? Because the SBA has changed systems so many times. So, and there's been some issues with claiming your certifications account. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so the positive thing is that you're going to have to claim your MySBA certifications account no matter what, because this is where your annual reviews will live. So it's different from Certify. I believe only the Mentor Protege program is still alive in Certify, and everything else is now in MySBA certifications. So to claim the business, first you have to create a new account, and your login details won't be the same as certified. That doesn't automatically come over. So if you have a different email address or anything like that, that's totally fine. And then you have to be the one to claim the business. So to claim the business, you need the UEI, the cage code, and the taxpayer identification number. And that has to align with what's in SAM. Only one person can claim the business, but one account can claim multiple businesses. So that's better than in Certify, where you were tied for one email address to one business. Now you can have as many businesses tied to each email address. So that's helpful. And then once you claim the business, you have your account. If it's your first time logging in, you have to provide a few background details on the business because Certify and MySBA, for some reason, do not speak to one another. So they just ask for some brief information about like your business structure, your ownership structure. And then once you submit it, even though those details look like a new application, it's obviously not. All of your certifications should pop up. So if you have SDVOSB, 8A, everything will be there in one place. And this will also help align in the future with annual reviews or every 3 year reviews for Health Zone, all aligning in a single place and hopefully on a single timeline. And so for people who've already claimed the business, you're now seeing in my SBA at the top, it says like data call. And that's the response to this, to the SBA letter.
While we're still on the, my SBA or my SBA versus certify, what we had also advised clients was make sure you go into your certify account, that is your old account, and download everything. So try to do a print screen of your previous annual reviews, do a print screen of even your 8A applications, any of the correspondence because as Anna had said, the systems don't talk to each other, and you want to make sure that whereas in the past, you might have used Certify as a repository for your data, thinking, hey, I can just keep it here, save it there, it'll always be located there. Given the sort of changes, given what's going on with SBA IT, we do recommend that you download or take print screens of all of the materials that you submitted to date in Certify because you don't want to be relying on that system, especially when it's eventually shuttered and could happen any day. So, lastly, on this slide, you'll notice in the letter or the email that you received, failure to respond may result in ineligibility for continued participation. For purposes here, delete the may and read will. So let's get into some of the more specific contents and what we think based on what the SBA has been saying, what they've been publishing, what some of the concerns are going to be here. And we'll address these items particularly for each items where we think they're applicable. So the big one here is going to be pass-throughs. The limitations on subcontracting have taken on a new importance with the idea that the 8A participants themselves are subcontracting greater than 50%, 75%, or 85% of the work, depending on the NAICS code. So we'll be looking at vendor lists, we'll be looking at subcontracts, we'll be looking at contracts to determine whether or not 8A participants were a quote unquote pass through. And we've seen that language used a significant amount of times by the SBA. We've also seen the fraud, waste, and abuse thrown around. Fraud, particularly with a focus on entity owned participants, that being benefits reporting, also possibly identification of common service providers. And for our individually owned 8A participants, identification of excessive withdrawals. With regard to waste, we're going to probably the SBA will probably be looking at the tax returns. We'll get into that to determine the profitability of 8A participants because, again, the misconception about the 8A program through the sort of pass-through lens is that 8As are just slapping on 10, 20, 30% to subcontractors and performing no value, which we know is absolutely not the case. And then finally, abuse. The SBA will be looking for bribery or kickback payments, and there's several places where we can potentially find, where they would potentially look for those. Um, I wanted to, start off. So here we're going to go through each of the individual 13 items. My colleague Anna and I are not accountants, but we're happy to try to answer questions as best we can. There's a couple of the individual 8A audit items that we want to focus on. But I think part of the good news here is depending on the accounting software. So you see the line here, easily obtainable via QuickBooks report. And we've put together some additional guidance. Honestly, when we drafted these slides, we had step-by-step guidance on how to extract this information from QuickBooks, but you wouldn't be able to read the slide. So just know that the general ledger, as an example, is a item that can be easily obtainable via QuickBooks reporting. So if you're working with your accountants, we would be happy to share those steps, or they'll be able to pull this file directly. But what I wanted to call out, and I think Anna has done a couple of times, is again, we're advising clients to respond to the letter and not the my certifications, or excuse me, my SBA demand, because here where there's a CSV file requirement for the general ledger, you want to make sure that you're uploading that CSV file, not a Word document, not a PDF, not anything else. To make sure that you're complying with those format guidelines. Um, with respect to the general ledger, I mean, the general ledger itself is it's a listing of all the financial transactions, and it's organized by cash, sales, expenses. So, to Anna's point previously, beyond that, this goes well beyond what you would report on your 8A annual review. And so here, this is sort of the master document that SBA intends for you to produce so that they can review it in greater detail. And here we've called out a couple of likely audit items. Again, limitations on subcontracting. If there are JVs, performance work share, excessive withdrawals, benefits reporting, kickbacks, common vendors, and common employees. And before I turn it over to Anna for additional questions or additional comments, I think here one of the big tasks is going to be, obviously we download the report, we put it into my SBA, but you want to look back at your previous 8A annual reviews to make sure what your general ledger contains, or what your general ledger displays, reflects that which you've reported in your 8A annual review. And
And well, that's a great point, Trevor. I would recommend actually not just for the general ledger, but for all of this, looking at your 8A annual review and seeing, for contracts, for example, obviously for the 8A annual review, you do not submit your contracts, or 8A contracts, but you submit the worksheets. So checking, okay, here are the worksheets that we submitted, which identified these contracts. So at a minimum, those are contracts that you should submit, because even though these systems don't talk, I would think that the SBA has a way of tracking what you've already previously submitted, so they could see if something's missing. It's possible you left something out on an annual review in the past. These things happen. This isn't necessarily the time to go back and correct it. So I wouldn't highlight, oh, we forgot this in 2023 or 2024, but now is the time to just be forthcoming and just give everything that is responsive. So for the general ledger, it's just whatever QuickBooks spits out. You're not trying to then, balance the books offline. It's the books are what they are. The numbers say what they say.
And that's a great point, Anna, because, unlike with 8A annual reviews, and I'm thinking particularly with the worksheets, there's no real opportunity here for a narrative. The numbers are what they are. So in the past, like for example, on maybe one of your 8A worksheets where you had identified that the limitations on subcontracting hadn't been met. In the box at the bottom of the document, you might have said, well, this was an 8A sole source requirement. It was an urgent requirement for the agency. There was huge startup costs in the first year, and we had to bring on staff that was subcontracted in order to meet agency priorities. And then your BOS might have reached out and said, okay, well, we're glad that you recognize this. And then by year two, let's have it fixed. Here, again, the SBA is just asking for the numbers. And in terms of submission, helpful to have that, right at the top, general ledger 2022, general ledger 2023, general ledger 2024. Um, the next document here, this trial balance, again, very easily obtainable via via QuickBooks report. This is a summary of the different accounting statements, the cash receivable, payables, income expenses, in a debit and credit form. So this is really looking at, okay, what is the 8A participant earning and what is the 8A participant paying out? So based on its payments from the federal government, what is the expense opportunity? What is the expense experience of the 8A in a trial balance form? Looking at the same issues that we flagged before, again, limitations on subcontracting, are there significant payments to entities that are not general service providers? Like, obviously you have your line for Microsoft and DocuSign and, your rent or your property expenses. But, what are the other, big ticket items that are standing out on this document that SBA can take a look at and potentially inquire further about? And anything on the trial balance?
No, but we are receiving a bunch of questions that are just more general of I haven't received an 8A contract or I'm fairly new in the program. How
Okay.
do I respond? And you you respond. So if you've never received an 8A contract, that just means for item number 9, you have to upload a document, but there you can upload a PDF of a Word document where you say, we were admitted to the program on this date. And to date, we have not received any 8A contracts, so we do not have anything responsive to this request. And
And I would say add that document to each of the three panels. So, so if and you can, and I agree, I think, Anna, you can produce this document one time, you put it into a PDF, but you want to make sure at the end of the exercise, you have a document for each of I mean, there's 13 items, times three, each of those panels.
Correct. But so in that situation, though, so you might not have anything for item 8 or item 9 for the copies of 8A contracts or number 10, which are the subcontracting agreements, but you're still going to have a general ledger, a trial balance. If the company was in existence, you should have been filing taxes. So the other items still do apply. And yeah, it's frustrating and it's more or less, it seems like you're reapplying all over again, but you're complying with the SBA's ask. And when you received the approval letter and you signed your participation agreement, one of the things you agreed to is that you will give the SBA access to your records if they ask for it. And now the SBA is asking for it. So it's frustrating and I sympathize, and the timing could not be worse. But that's the situation. So even if you were just admitted to the program on December 4th, if you received this letter, you have to respond.
And Anna raises a great point. So even though you might not have 8A contracts, you might not even have federal contracts, you are still in the program and you are going to have regular business operating expenses. So real quick example, client says, I don't have bank statements from 2022. Well, 2023. Well, you registered for SAM in 2022. As a part of the registration for SAM, you're required to provide a bank account. So that's going to be an issue too, that's going to have to be explained. But I know there's a couple of items that we really want to touch on. And I will say we're also the National 8A Association has generously allowed us to stay on for a little bit extra time in case we are getting a lot of questions. But this document here, this IRS Form 506, was a document that we received a lot of questions about. And so here, given the sort of three panel feature, I'm calling them panels, upload buttons, you're going to want to upload a individual 4506 for each of those. So the IRS document itself allows you to include multiple years on a single request. So you can either complete the form and include the 3 years on the same document and just upload the same document three times, or you can identify 1 year and then upload that, for tax year 2022, tax year 2023, and tax year 2024. And you can upload those documents separately into the panel so that the SBA will have access to to these returns. And this is really kind of unprecedented. We haven't seen SBA ask for tax transcripts or tax returns, but what this document effectively allows, it's a release. It allows the IRS to provide the SBA with the tax returns that you filed with the IRS. And again, they're going to be looking at items that you might have reported on your 8A annual review, the adjusted gross income. What was the salaries that you paid to officers? What was the withdrawals that you took out of the company? So this document goes beyond the sort of transcript. Did you pay or did you not pay your taxes, or do you have a delinquent tax debt? This is going to get into the actual tax returns. Anna, sorry.
And one note about this letter. From our understanding and our knowledge, we have this letter was the same for every 8A participant. So it does not matter if the entity is owned by a tribe, by an individual, it's the same ask. So knowing that for item 3, the form 4506, we are interpreting it to be for the company's tax returns. So if you are an individual who owns an 8A, we do not believe that you have to submit one for your own personal tax returns.
That's great advice, especially I know there's a lot of S corp, so you're giving the permission for the tax identification number for the entity, not your own individual tax returns. Bank statements, I think folks can figure this one out or pretty quickly. You go to your bank, you should be able to input dates for a statement to satisfy this requirement. Nothing necessarily needed from QuickBooks, even though there is a link or other accounting software. Just log into your bank account and make sure that you're producing a bank statement that if your company's calendar year, year follows the calendar year, January 1 to December 31st, January 1 to December 31st, January 1 to December 31st. Bank reconciliations. I don't think this was one of the ones that we wanted to highlight, but this one certainly is. And we can answer questions about these, but the payroll register and reconciliation is a pretty big document. And again, fortunately, easily generated through QuickBooks or ADP, Paychex, Gusto, whichever you're using. But this is a payroll matter. So again, we're going to be looking at the SBA will be looking at the officers and employees, how much those individuals are being paid. Recall generally the 8A participant, the individual that's socially and economically disadvantaged has to be the highest paid. So if there's individuals that are being paid more, that could be a potential issue. But again, SBA is really taking a hard look at the payroll for matters. Anna, do you want to walk us through, some of the considerations that we've had with the list of employees? Because this is a big one.
Yes, because this is another one of the vague ones. So, unfortunately, employee is not defined in SBA's 8A regulations. So, we are, I don't want to say we're guessing, but you can't just point to the regs and say, here's what the SBA wants. But in other regulations, it excludes individuals who are not owners and receive no compensation for work, individuals who receive deferred compensation for work performed, independent contractors, and subcontractors. So for this, how I envision it, it's again a single document per year. And then within that document, you have it just as the slide shows, 8A contract number 1, and then just a typed out list of your employees. And so notice an employee like John Doe appears multiple times in the same year. And Then we didn't include it here, but I think that you should have one where it says not applicable if you have any employees that don't work on 8A contracts, because you want this list of employees to align with the previous item about the payroll. And so it should include employees who were employed in that year. They might not work there today. They might have left in July of that year, but if any of their time was attributed to a contract, their name should appear on that line.
And I want to just emphasize here, so what we had come up with as sort of reporting was, again, you have to do this by the year, so 2022, 2023. But I mean, many 8A participants on the call might be, are in services contracts. So you have base plus four. If you are performing that 8A contract, let's say you're in option year two, in 2022, or the last option year is in 2022. You want to make sure that you are identifying, and again, it's just that contract number, just the individual names, no dollar values, no amount of hours. No, remember, what is the SBA asking for? It's a list of contracts, list of employees, nothing beyond that. But the point here being, make sure that you're covering your option periods, or make sure that you're adding contracts and taking them off. So you might have one contract entry, an 8A contract that was performed across all three of these years. You want to make sure as you're doing your reconciliation that that 8A contract with the individuals, and those individuals might change year over year, but that 8A contract is listed for each of the individual years that you're reporting for. You don't want to just say the 8A contract was awarded in 22, and then that's it. Because you were still performing that 8A contract potentially in 2023 and 2024. So just make sure you're accounting for the option periods as well.
And one question I'm seeing is, does this request also require non-8A contracts? We have interpreted it to be limited to 8A contracts because of the totality of this letter when you read it in its entirety. Um, I don't think you would be wrong to break it out further if you wanted to, but we don't think that is necessary.
Thank you, Anna. Let's see. List of vendors. So again, we can easily pull this from QuickBooks. Just think who do if you're using QuickBooks or Gusto, you can identify. We would recommend being overly broad. So this is basically anybody who you paid money to. So it's not just in connection, because notice here, there's a list of all vendors as well as joint ventures. It's not subcontractors. It's not employees. It's a list of all vendors. So you can pull this information pretty quickly. We just gave a couple of examples. Remember, think information technology. You've got a license for Microsoft, you've got a license for Adobe, you've got a license for DocuSign. Travel, who did you stay with? Who did you fly with? Where did you eat? Again, there's no requirement for dollar values, quantity of usage, frequency of usage. So for 2022, what we recommend doing is downloading from your accounting software, or your credit card statement, the list of vendors that you use, put that into Excel, alphabetize them, and turn that list into a PDF and upload one document for each of the 3 years. Again, no dollar values, no frequency, no anything. You're just identifying all of the firms, all of the vendors that you've worked with. Copy of 8A contracts. As Anna mentioned, this is where the demand letter varies significantly from the 8A annual review. 8A annual review, 8A worksheet, submit that, that's it. Now, the SBA is asking for copies of the contract. So, first, don't rely on what was submitted in your 8A annual review, but this means the actual document. And I know I was a contracting officer. There might be 5 or 6 attachments to each contract. Make sure you upload the 8A contract for the year that it was awarded, and also make sure that you're including the modifications. So if there was any modifications, just upload those documents as well. Anna, anything on 8A contracts?
Yes, there you can. We were just talking about this yesterday. You can exclude the confidential.
Ah, yes,
There was
great
that
point.
call out. If
Yes.
you want to
So
speak to it, sorry.
for our folks that are working on cleared contracts, maybe DoD or Treasury, or Department of State, if you are working on cleared contracts, do not upload a copy of those cleared contracts. That's CUI, it's confidential, it might even be at a higher classification. What we would recommend doing is identifying the contract merely by the contract number and including a statement that it is a classified contract and that they can reach out, that the SBA can reach out if they have additional questions on what that work might entail. Let's see. I think that was it on this slide. I think we should, before we keep moving though, we on the question of 8A contract versus non-8A contract, just so we're clear, um, it's an open question on joint ventures. So obviously, many are working contracts through joint ventures. The joint venture itself is a separate legal entity. What we are recommending is that clients submit 8A contracts that they were awarded as the prime, not 8A contracts that they were awarded as a joint venture. And certainly not 8A contracts that they were working on as a subcontractor, because again, you see here the language is really vague. The firm is currently working for the last 3 fiscal years. Well, what does working mean? I could be the prime, I could be the sub, I could be in a JV. But if you're a subcontractor, you have no legal right to demand the prime contract from the prime contractor. Maybe they've given it to you, maybe not. But it would be unreasonable for the SBA to expect that you produce documents that your contracts that you're performing exclusively, for example, as a subcontractor. And we believe the same for a joint venture because ultimately your firm is a subcontractor to the joint venture. So for the sake of consistency, our guidance to clients has been 8A contracts awarded to your entity as a prime contractor.
And just to add to that, if you read the data request in its entirety, it says that the SBA is requesting or request by January 5th, 2026, that you provide your, skipping down to number 9, copy of all 8A contracts. So ignoring the currently working on, just reading that as a sentence, it's your, who this letter was addressed to, 8A contracts.
Thank you. And then on the subcontracting agreements, so this again a little bit tricky because subcontracting is defined in the 8A regs, but we don't think that definition is particularly useful. So when here we're recommending that you upload copies of your agreements that you have signed with your subs um, in performance of 8A contracts for which you are a prime. So you're the prime contractor on an 8A contract. You have a service agreement with another 8A or an other than small business. The SBA is requesting that you upload a copy of that contract. And again, here they're going to be looking at, okay, what is the total value of the contract? What is the total value of the subcontract? If the total value of the subcontract matches that of the prime contract, there's likely going to be an issue. Do we have any other questions, Anna, that are popping up? I know we're going through these slides really quickly.
There are a lot. Just one global. People are asking like what we think the response or the results are going to be, and if that those things are going to be announced. Trevor and I don't work with the SBA. I can tell you they do things that we could not have anticipated, and I think if from what we've seen over the past 11 months, if the SBA, this current SBA sees a win, they will announce it. If there's, comes up squeaky clean, then I think this will just sort of disappear and go away.
Yeah, I think, and this is why we had started off with, the hub zone information was even though to Anna's point, we are sort of in unprecedented times, we haven't really seen the SBA act in this way before. Traditionally, it's been an advocate. Now, I mean, we can go back to the McCain-McCaskill days and Washington Post articles and trying to, delegitimize tribal and ANC participation. That happened. HubZone happened. But what we think really, and I agree with Anna, and even the folks at SBA might admit this, is there is a broad conception on behalf of the political appointees at the SBA that this program in particular is non-value add to the government, and that the 8A participants are merely a pass-through for other businesses in order to make money. And we know that that's not the case, but there might be a few bad actors that are out there. So think of this as phase one. SBA is demanding, first of all, I think SBA's desire, or at least the desire on the part of some, is that you just won't respond. And then in that case, you're out of the program, you failed to respond, that's it. So that's sort of an initial weeding out. And then through this data, SBA will analyze and consolidate and verify with potentially other agencies for problematic items like limitations on subcontracting, excessive withdrawals, any of the program rules that you're following and tracking. There's going to be additional letters that come out, which are proposed decertifications from the program. So just like with HubZone, started off with sort of generalized document demands and generalized production demands. Those will be converted to um, notices that the SBA is either graduating you or taking you out of the program. So this is sort of phase one.
And we recommend, because my SBA does not align with the demand letter, we recommend preparing a cover letter where you name the document that is responsive to each item. So for general ledger, you say general 2022 general ledger entitled whatever the document is that you uploaded to my SBA. And then you upload this cover letter in addition to emailing just the cover letter to your BOS. And in that cover letter, we also recommend designating all of the documents as confidential commercial information pursuant to 13 CFR 102.7. Again,
Yeah.
that's 13 CFR 102.7.
And we'll go ahead and we'll share the cover letter. The folks at National 8A will send, I think they send out a post webinar email. We can share that document with them so that they're able to share it with you. But do want to flag Anna's critical point there. To the extent possible, using that FOIA protection marking on each of the documents that are submitted. Now, you can do it on the cover letter that should flow through to the other documents, but to the extent possible, you want to invoke that FOIA protection, because my suspicion is on January 6th, SBA is going to get a rash of FOIA requests demanding production of information that you have been required to produce to the SBA. So at least with these FOIA protection markings, before the SBA can release anything that you have submitted, the SBA is required to notify you and give you an opportunity to object to their release. So we want to make sure that we're invoking those protections here so that your sensitive commercial information and your everything else that you've uploaded here, contract pricing, subcontract pricing, all of that is not subject to is not producible under a FOIA request. Um, any other questions or big highlight items, Anna? I know we're way over time and want to thank everybody for indulging us as we go through hopefully what was a helpful summary of these matters.
A lot of things I think align with what we've discussed, and I believe the slides will also be either posted by National 8A or sent around with that draft cover letter that Trevor just referenced. So if we know we went through this really quickly, and we want you to have the information. But basically, I mean, I think a takeaway is respond to the question that is asked and don't try to interpret what you think the SBA is wanting. And also be consistent. So If your fiscal year isn't a calendar year, then that's the data points that you should provide for everything except for the tax form document. Don't just cut and paste and I don't know, just move quickly. Like take your time, um, and really, I think be consistent and just try to have a good faith response. You're not going to get in trouble if the SBA comes back with additional questions because you couldn't know what they were asking for because a question was vague and unclear. But if you try your best, I think it should be okay.
And lastly, for me, I think the 8A BOSs, your business opportunity specialists, were sort of caught off guard by this demand. This wasn't coordinated with the BOS, with the district offices. If you do have questions, remember your BOS is supposed to be there as an advocate for you. Now we know SBA is short-staffed. It's often hard to get a hold of them. They are a resource for you. National Aid A is a resource for you. At GCP, we're a resource for you. We're happy to answer questions. And also, other 8As are resources for you. So make sure, as you're sort of considering your response that, as a community, as an 8A community, that you're sharing information with each other because, given the sort of unprecedented times in which we find ourselves, we all want to be good advocates for the program and focus on the tremendous value that not only is 8A participation driving to 8A participants themselves, but also to federal agencies. So, with that, I do really want to thank the National 8A Association for organizing this event so quickly. Please feel free to reach out to us or National 8A if you have additional questions. And I wish you the good luck as you prepare these responses. And again, please feel free to reach out. But thank you so much for your time this afternoon on this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your guys' time and expertise today on this very important subject. As Trevor and Anna indicated, we will be posting this on our website. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to send our way. And we look forward to seeing you all next month. As an additional note, if you are interested in joining us at the 2026 National Small Business Conference, registration is still open. You can visit our website at n8asbc.org for additional information, or you can reach us directly at events@national8aassociation.org. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
We'll see
Thank
you in
you.
Nashville.